With all this talk of the Authority, I have been incredibly interested in the team, and I have gone back to look at all of their history, as I've seen a lot of people are wondering who are they, haven't really heard of them, they don't know a lot about the history of these characters, how they play into it, power sets, really who they are. So I thought I would come here and I would do my best at going in depth and breaking down each and every single one of these characters. So today I'm going to be starting with Jenny Sparks. She was one of the founders, one of the most prominent characters, and she was in the original lineup. So starting with the original team and the main lineup, as we just aforementioned, the founder of the team, Jenny Sparks. We also have Swift, Jack Hawksmoor, Apollo, Midnighter, the engineer, Jerome Thorndike, who is the doctor, and that makes up the original lineup. I'm going to do my best at breaking down each of these characters. Today we're going to do, as I said, Jenny Sparks. So Jenny is what is called a Century Baby, and she is a member of the Authority. She was born on January 1st in 1900 at the stroke of midnight and died on December 31st of 1999, so she lived for 100 years. Right as it ticked over into the new century, which is where a new entity and her successor, Jenny Quantum, who was the spirit of the 21st century, was born. So Jenny was born in England. Her family possessed quite a large fortune, and then she was sent to an all-girls school in Vienna. Her history intersects with a lot of our own, as her family died in 1912 on the RMS Titanic, inheriting nothing as her father's arch-nemesis took everything. Her godfather, who was none other than Albert Einstein, invited her to Zurich and offered to help her finish off her education. Before leaving, she befriended a young Adolf Hitler and was hoping to help him escape poverty, so she suggested he pursue a career in politics, which is something that she would later regret. Between 1913 and 1919 is when her powers started to develop and she stopped aging. Her adventures from 1919 to the early 1930s were marked the mindset era of scientific romance, and is the period the Wildstorm universe first had contact with an alternate Earth. In the early 1930s, she took to America and she was an adventurer/hero. Then during World War II, she worked as an Allied operative against the Nazi super beings, which is a whole story that I just will not get into today. She returned to America after the war and became a private eye. In the 1950s, she got involved with a British space group. In the 1960s was a new age of heroism and the first time she led a group of heroes, but then one of the members later overdosed to prove his masculinity, went on a homicidal rage, and Jenny unfortunately had to end him. This broke her, so she decided to go to bed until 1982, not like fully asleep, just kind of like dormant and laid low and just, not doing a lot. A new group was then formed in the 1980s, but they turned out also to unfortunately be homicidal, so she left them after threatening them and then was offered a spot on the Stormwatch, which we'll speak on soon. Stormwatch plays a prominent part in the Authority history. In 1992, she saved Apollo and Midnighter from an ambush. So that is a quick look at her history, and we'll get into her powers and her affiliations. So it starts with Stormwatch. She was contacted a second time, and then she was inevitably convinced to join. This team has had many members, but the main ones from the Authority lineup are including Jenny herself, Apollo, Jack Hawksmoor, Midnighter, and some other members not from the original lineup, but from like additions and former members and all that fun stuff. So we won't get too much into this team, but it played a massive prominent role in most of the Authority members' histories. Jenny was given command of this team, but after a few major calamities, and after butting heads with the man known as Henry Bendix, who was the operator of the team, kind of like their version of Nick Fury, except like just a horrible man, she ended up later actually killing him. So it turns out though, he did not really die. She thought she did, but turns out she didn't. Then the team disbanded and she created the aforementioned Authority. So she later died, and at that moment the new entity that was born for the new century was Jenny Quantum, or also called Jenny Quarks. It was very confusing. Now, her main powers is that she is the spirit of the 20th century, so born on the stroke of midnight at the start of 1900 and dying the same time at the start of 2000s. Immortality through these 100 years, so she stopped aging at 19 and was immortal throughout the 100-year life. She had electrokinesis, which gave her absolute control of electricity. She could shoot bolts of lightning, travel through power lines, shape electricity, as well as absorb electricity. She also had an accelerated healing, and that is a little in-detail overview of Jenny Sparks. She died not long after Wildstorm kind of like rolled into DC. Wasn't necessarily in the same universe, but like they were bought in 1999, and she died midway through the start of the early 2000s, and then was replaced. So when the Wildstorm characters officially came over into like the actual DC Prime Earth during Flashpoint in 2011, she had obviously already been gone for 11 years up until then. So Jenny Quantum and Quarks who are the same person, as I said, confusing, have a lot of history to do with the DC. So Jenny Sparks, the original, doesn't have a lot in the actual Prime Earth, if that makes a lot of sense, but she has been mentioned. And for a quick add-on for the Jenny Sparks video here, we'll do a quick little overview of Jenny Quarks or Jenny Quantum. So starting with her Wildstorm origin. Her real name is Jennifer Quarks, but her alias is Jenny Quantum. Her origin we roughly touched on before, but it goes a bit like this. Born on January 1st, 2000 in Singapore during the death of Jenny Sparks, her birth mother was killed by the villains attempting to kidnap her and use her to shape this coming century. Her biological father is unknown, but her adoptive fathers are Apollo and Midnighter. Jenny Quantum then forced herself to age several years to fight better against Henry Bendix and his evil group. Some interesting comic arcs that are including her is Worldstorm, Number of the Beast, and World's End. And her powers in the Wildstorm universe include being the spirit of the 21st century, quantum reality manipulation, chronokinesis, dimensional travel, energy projection, flight, force fields, phasing, probability manipulation, teleportation, and immortality throughout this century. Her first appearance in Wildstorm was the Authority issue 12 in April 2000, and her first DC appearance was Stormwatch Volume 3 issue 1 in November 2011. And speaking of her DC first appearance, this is her DC counterpart's Prime Earth origin. So her real name here is Jennifer Emily Quantum, but her alias is Jenny Quantum. Her history here is still relatively similar, and her power set didn't really change besides now having the ability of self-sustenance. So I hope that kind of sheds some light on who she is. A lot of the other characters have had a lot of their histories changed from DC to Wildstorm, as it was just so much. These characters are incredibly interesting and there's so much to them. But I do hope you enjoy. If you made it this far, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, comment if you know anything about these guys at all, if you agree with me, if you think I'm wrong, or if you found this interesting at all. Small channel, I'm trying to grow, trying to do my best. I just want to put out some amazing, informative content on some relative topics at the moment. So I hope to see you all next time. Have a beautiful day. Comics out.